Welcome, everybody. We're discussing co-parenting through COVID lockdown again, and just a whole lot of new questions and circumstances and situations that we haven't faced before. So I think let's start with a general explanation of what the new directives mean for co-parenting. Aisha?
Okay. So, Felicity, the new directives that were issued just a few days ago have now given parents who share parental rights and responsibilities, it's given them the allowance to transport their children between households, provided that, and there's two conditions. One, there must be a court order in place or a registered parenting plan. So there has to be some formal arrangement between the parents. And if there is, then the children can, under those circumstances, be transported between the two households.
Mohammed?
Yeah, that is 100% correct. The problem which the minister didn't deal with is he only dealt with maybe 2 or 3% of the country's parents who are not living together with the children. For argument's sake, he's saying only parents who were divorced. Obviously, in the divorce decree, there will be provisions dealing with co-parenting, and parents who had problems in the past who approached the court for a audit regarding parenting, etc. But all the other parents who were happily co-parenting for the last many years, they unfortunately are not allowed to move between households because they weren't firstly divorced or they weren't embroiled in any litigation previously.
Okay, so here's one thing that has come up, and that is parents who have a parenting coordinator who has been coordinating the shared parenting for months now, and it is costing an absolute fortune, and they cannot see their children because it's not court ordered. So for me personally...
Yeah, but Felicity, that's...
Sorry?
Yeah, so Felicity, that's... Yeah, I think what you're saying goes back to what Mohammed is saying. The directives really are only dealing with a tiny portion of people. And then it takes away a lot of divorcing couples are very, very amenable, and they may not have something structured, or set agreement in place or a court order, and it works really well. Let me tell you, even in terms of, I'm going to use Muslim marriages, for example, as you know, they're not recognized, right? So on a daily basis, and I think about 60 or 70% of my clients are not legally married. They divorce and they don't have a court order in place, but they divorce on very amicable terms. They may have signed an agreement so that, it makes things a bit clearer, but definitely no court order in place or parenting plan registered. So exactly what you're saying is that there are a lot of people that are going to be adversely affected by this, and that would not have their rights, would not be able to exercise their rights because they just would not have had a court order in place.
So my understanding of how this new directive came about was due to pressure by the legal fraternity who questioned the validity of certain departments or certain ministers making certain decisions and rulings, and based on the constitutionality of it and on the premise the best interest of the child is of paramount importance. Now, working off that premise, exactly the same thing applies now, because you've got such a large percentage of parents who are being disenfranchised and their rights are being violated and the children's rights are being violated under exactly the same circumstances as before. And then it also brings in the question of equality before the law and dignity.
Yes, of course, it's a very strong constitutional argument can be made by the parents. They're saying we are being discriminated against based upon the fact that we were not divorced, or secondly, that we were not embroiled in litigation. And because of that, parents who were embroiled in litigation or were divorced, they got a divorce order, dealing with custody arrangements, they are being preferenced in the legal system because only the law is only looking after their interests. and only children at the same time, whereas parents who were divorced or parents that went to court, only those children are being looked after by the minister and not other parents, not other children. So there's a strong constitutional argument of how unfair and how improper the specific law is. It discriminates against many parents and children. And at the same time, it discriminates against parents who cannot afford to get lawyers, to go to court and get a parenting plan registered, or having a custody agreement by the order of court. So it discriminates against people who do not have money as well. So it's basically saying those who have money can, and obviously got a parenting plan registered, we're looking after their rights. Those parents who got divorced, who obviously had some type of, some of them didn't have to have money for the divorce, but some people that had lawyers to get a divorce, those parents we are looking after, and those children we are looking after. But the rest of the nation, parents who are not living together and the child is with another child, we are not looking after you. Those kids, stay where you are. But the other privileged children, please visit one parent or the other. That's a constitutional argument which I'll bring up.
Okay, so one of our members, they went to the Family Advocate's office this morning. Well, the father went to Family Advocate's office this morning with an interim agreement that they have both agreed to for during the lockdown period. She did an affidavit and sent it with him and a copy of her ID, and the Family Advocate's office endorsed it. And so they are able to fulfill their parenting rights. But I don't know if we put that out there as a possible solution. I can't see that every single Family Advocate's office is going to be as accommodating or having used their initiative and allowed this to take place for this period of time. So, I'm saying to people, well, it worked for this person, you can try it, but we don't know what the response is going to be.
Yeah, Felicity, that's the thing. We don't actually know what the response is going to be. I think the way the directives stand currently, more clarity is needed. I've had so many queries about parents who do, and even parents who have court orders in place. It's the way the court orders are drafted, it's not going to be possible under the current lockdown. For example, there's supervised visitation in a public area. And so then, so the provisions state that they're not making provision for every little detail. And in my opinion, I don't think it's going to work. There's going to have to be further amendments. To be honest with you, it's way too vague. It doesn't take into consideration. It says the court order or the registered parenting plan is sufficient proof, when you're trying to transport your children. It doesn't specify what distance can we transport these children to or from. It's completely blanket. So you can use this court order to now travel. That's what it seemed like, right? It doesn't go into any formal details. Going to the Family Advocate's office and asking them to assist, that's really going to be up to the Family Advocate's office, whether they're going to assist you or not. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. But it depends, not even the office. It depends on who you get on the day. I mean, any family law practitioner will tell you, to get the Family Advocate to be that kind and, and give you a response that quickly. You tell me this person went this morning and managed to get it endorsed this morning. That's fabulous. I have not been able to do that yet, but, it remains to be seen. I don't see the Family Advocate's offices dealing with hundreds of cases in one day and saying, yes, I'm going to endorse all these agreements. They obviously need to, they have a turnaround time. As far as I'm aware, Durban, it's, 48 hours before we even get an endorsement where the parties are both mutually agreeing to a parenting plan. So I don't see how that's going to be workable, especially if we're now going to create a demand and create a massive influx to the Family Advocate's offices. They're just not going to cope with that. So I don't see that being a realistic solution.
Okay, so and the other thing that has come up that happened this morning was that a father had gone to, the father was moving the child. I'm not too sure whether it was to or from, and he was stopped in a roadblock, and the South African police official told him to go back home, and that's no movement of children. And he produced the parenting plan and a copy of the directive, and the policeman said, no movement of children. And then another policeman came and said, no, there is a change in the directives and let him pass through. I mean, one, it was pretty traumatic for the child, and people are now saying, well, that's our fear. You know, we are scared because we don't know who we're going to encounter at the roadblock, and whether they have the capacity to interpret and understand. And then over and above that, there's already been allegations of fraudulent parenting plans. How are they going to pick up whether they're legitimate or whether they're fraudulent? And what is the recourse?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty as to how these officers, these police officers, will deal with the specific matter. So I know for a fact we only got this regulation, I think, on a Tuesday evening. You can't expect that police officers the next morning should know what the law is, although it becomes the law. And at the same time, we have another problem here where people might also decide to, create fraudulent, parenting plans, or fraudulent court documentation and show to the police officers. And unfortunately, that is, in any situation that could happen. My greater concern is when people are being refused to exercise their parental rights responsibility, although they have a court order. But Felicity, as I said early on, I think, this is only the tip of the iceberg. What about the other parents who have a legitimate reason to see the children? They will be refused because clearly they do not have a court order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one of the other things that has come up as well is where urgent high court orders were sought and granted under the previous restrictions, where children were not allowed to be moved. So clearly, I mean, those are, what is their recourse? Because they're still being told that no, my court order stands. No movement of children, in spite of it not being in alignment with the latest directive.
Yeah, so Felicity, our courts, our laws don't work retrospectively. What that means is that the judge would have been obliged to hear that matter based on those facts, and it had to have been, and they had to make a ruling based on the directives that were applicable at that time, right? So the judge probably wasn't incorrect in the judgment that they made. What is the recourse now? They can obviously reapproach the court under the current directives, and they would be allowed. I think they would obviously be allowed access now. It's a huge difference between saying movement of children is prohibited, and then it seems like a direct contrast to say, well, now they can move, provided there's a court order. There's no limitation on that. Some parents have access daily. A lot of my clients have daily access where, they see the children for 3 or 4 hours a day. How is that in the best interest of the child to move? So you're saying that it's okay to move a child around daily during lockdown under the umbrella of COVID-19. How then are we protecting? What's the purpose of the lockdown then? If the parent, it's not just the child's not going to drive themselves. So it's the parent themselves, it's the child that is going to be moving these children back and forth between two homes because the court order says so. And of course, yeah.
My question is, this is me. So the father of my child got a ruling to say that the child stays with him for the period of lockdown. Okay, that's the directive has changed. What is my recourse? I cannot afford an attorney. Can I approach the High Court without legal representation? Will this be considered as an urgent matter under the circumstances?
Yeah, this morning we had an urgent matter, supposed to be urgent matter in the High Court, the Western Cape High Court. So it was a child matter. It was an application for relocation. So the matter wasn't, severely urgent. It could have been basically, according to the judge, remanded after the lockdown period. But the problem we had at court this morning was we are blocked at the entrance of the court. Whatever discussions you have with the judge, it has to be done telephonically. So you phone the judge, wherever they are in the chambers. Some of them might also be at home, depending on the circumstances. So it's easy for us to say go to court. There are so many high courts in the Cape Town. There are so many children in the country. There are so many children's courts in the country. Each court will have their own operations, their own directives, etc. How they operate. Like in the Western Cape now, today is recess, and the court is obviously limited as to what they can deal with on the specific day. So I do not want to say here, go back to the court. Theoretically, maybe that could work. But in practice, will it actually happen? Will the court relook the matter? Because remember, the judge had made that order 2 weeks ago. It will not be the same judge unless something happened there, but more than likely, it will be a total different judge that will hear the matter today or tomorrow. And also, tomorrow is the long weekend, so we're only back in court next weekend, Tuesday, if you want to get to court during normal court hours. So in theory, the answers are there, but in practice, I don't think anything will happen.
And also, Felicity.
Maybe you can also cover this, Aisha. What I'm trying to understand, there's been various circumstances where a person, the only recourse is to go to the court, whether it's to get a copy of a document or whether it's to ask the question or whatever, is that as a lay person, what are the chances until lockdown is over of the lay person, if legals are having difficulty, what are the chances of a lay person actually having access? And I ask this because, I mean, for me, it just seems, I understand, yes, the restrictions, all of that, we understand that, and we do adhere. My concern is every time this is spoken about, it's very quickly pointed out that we have a right, that's why the family courts are open, that's why the High Court is open, to deal with these matters. But the truth is, they're being turned away.
Okay, but Felicity, so I'm gonna quickly answer this. So yes, perhaps people are being turned away, but I don't see any competent court turning anyone away in extreme circumstances. And the courts are not open and operating normally right now. It's not normal. You're not going to walk in and be like, hey, that's not what's going to happen. As Mohammed mentioned earlier, even the urgents, they're not being held in, they're being held telephonically. So you need to put it into perspective. Is it really, if it's life and death and there's a child's safety that's seriously at hand, not I want to see my child, I can't live without them. When there's a serious issue and there's a child that is really in severe danger, then yes, I don't see a court turning anybody away, right? If every single person is going to rock up at the court and say, look, I have this issue and I have that, this is not the time for it. And we're just going to have to accept that, all right? This is, and I've said this before, we are in an unprecedented time, right? But the health and safety of our children has to come first. At this, being an attorney, I'm saying this to you. At this stage, where we are currently, the kids have to come first. Their safety has to come first. Contact, etc., moving them around has to be secondary. The courts are open, yes, because we cannot deny anybody access to the courts under extreme circumstances. And if you look at the directives issued, it's gone into a lot of detail about the family courts. If you look at it, the family courts are actually still pretty much operational. When I say family, I'm referring to the domestic violence, maintenance, and access courts. Those are open, whereas normal civil courts, motion courts are not. So that goes to show there is a lot of importance placed on children, placed on access and maintenance and domestic violence, but it's going to have to be serious. It cannot be something where it's just a matter of it's not convenient for me or I really want to see my children. It's going to have to be, life or death, if I'm going to put it that way. It's going to have to be a life or death situation where you need to approach the court and you need recourse. And I think in that circumstances, you'll get what you want.
I agree with Aisha. At no point will the court push you away or say go away without listening to you first. Don't get me wrong. So if you make the application, you draft your documentation like any person should under normal circumstances and in lockdown, it will be, the judge will have a look at it. The judge will have to apply his mind. It might not be done face to face, but whether or not the judge will give you audience and entertain your application like you would under normal circumstances, there the judge will have to make a call. Is it as urgent as Aisha mentioned here, life and death? If it is so, the court will attend to it. If it's not, the court will have to deal with it as the directives or how they are directed to deal with these type of situations at the present moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the amount of parents, and it's both mothers and fathers, who are trying to come to terms with that it's unreasonable. What is happening is unreasonable, whether it's the inefficiencies in this directive or the behavior of the other parent, that they are just having to accept it as is, without any recourse. And also not being able to say to them, well, post this, this is what you can do. Yes, we know there's recourse, but then again, the courts are going to be absolutely swamped with all the cases that were postponed, the new cases, and there's going to be a flood of new cases again. And I mean, this can go on for at least a year to try and get to the sorting all of these things out. So hopefully, I mean, I'm saying hopefully, the powers that be will realize what it is and actually maybe have the courts open for longer hours or put more people in those positions to try and speed these things up, because I think that constitutionally it's absolutely and utterly unfair that these cases, and I know it's going to happen because we see even prior to this how long cases took to get resolved, and now these are just even more complications.
No, Felicity, you're 100% right over there. Government has to, come with some type of, recovery process. All matters in all courts, I mean, 90% of the matters in all courts are now being postponed until post the lockdown. Many people do not know the dates the matters are being postponed to. They do not know what happened with the matter, how the magistrate dealt with it, how the judge dealt with it. So what basically will happen is after lockdown, you will have to go to court and find out what happened to a matter if nobody contacted you or you didn't contact the court. So I also foresee serious issues coming after lockdown with the judicial system, but at the same time with the entire country, not only the legal system, in commerce, in agriculture, in food, everywhere there will be problems. I mean, people want to get the UIF, they want to get their money. Where do they go to? Taxes, etc.
Unfair dismissals.
Exactly, yeah.
I just want to quickly put it into perspective. I actually attended an international conference last week. And the thing that really got me was that what we're discussing right now is not a uniquely South African problem. This is a global problem. And as much as we're experiencing it and we have all these difficulties within our country and we want to find solutions, yes. I think putting it into perspective is that this is a global issue right now. There are attorneys across the world that are dealing with the exact movement of children was one of the main things that came up. In some of the, I think some of the other countries, they have, from onset, they allowed the movement of children. I think we came in it, perhaps we've now brought ours more in alignment with international laws. So yes, I think a lot is going to come out of this, but to a certain degree, we're going to have to make peace with that. There's going to be a very new normal coming out of this. I think that if we have to sit back and say, oh, we're just going to go back in and everything's going to run smoothly as if, COVID-19 is not still happening to us, I think that's, we're going to be sadly disappointed if we think that's going to happen. So going forward, there's going to be a lot that's going to change. I think the courts themselves are going to have to find new solutions, new ways of doing things. There's going to be a new normal. Whether or not the lockdown ends next week or not, I really believe there's going to have to be a new normal going forward.
Yeah, so I suppose, a flattening of the curve. And another thing that I'm really hoping for is that this is a flattening, particularly in the space that we have an interest in, that there is a flattening of the curve of family courts, although it's said they are considered as important as other aspects of law. My personal thing is it has not been. It's always been disregarded. Budgets, I don't believe they get a fair portion of the budgets and systems and digitizing, whatever. It's always at the bottom of the list. So I'm hoping that with all of this, that there really is a commitment from, and I'm afraid it starts with a political commitment to recognizing that this is a problem and policy in place to address it with the same significance that it addresses things like commerce, tourism, all of those aspects, which are reasonably high priority for the government. And there are relief packages, but the family courts, absolutely silent. And it's just this reluctance from the powers that be to acknowledge it. And I mean, that's where I get so infuriated, because they are so silent on family courts generally. So they'll talk a bit about the increase in gender-based violence. They refer to the NSP, and we're talking about co-parenting. But the other part of it, the maintenance, there hasn't been much mentioned about it. Well, there's been very little, other than what time the courts are open.
Yeah.
No. Okay, well, that's it for today.